At odds for decades, Morocco and Algeria are now in the fiercest arms race in North Africa. Some rule out an armed clash between the neighbors. But where does this race leave the region? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Hashim Ahalbarra. There are two countries locked in a dispute and weapons stockpiles. Morocco and Algeria have been at odds over Western Sahara region and their border since they went to war in 1963. The border has been closed since 1994, and Algiers has said it will stay that way until the two countries agree on a resolution to the Western Sahara conflict. And as the two issues continue to linger, both countries are increasing their arms supplies. In 2006, Russian President Vladimir Putin paid a visit to Algeria, and the countries signed a deal in which Algeria agreed to buy arms worth an estimated $8 billion. But in February, Algiers said the first order of fighter jets it received was substandard and wants Moscow to take them back. Now it's looking to buy planes from the United States. That's where neighboring Morocco has purchased fighter jets. This after they pulled out a deal they struck with France when President Sarkozy visited the country last October. Well, joining our discussion are our guest in Rabat, Lahsen Haddad. He's a columnist and professor of strategic studies at Mohammed V University. Here in Doha, Saad Jabbar, Deputy Director of the Center for North African Studies. And in London, David Hartwell. He's the Middle East editor at Jane's Country Risk. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for joining us. Let me start by asking Mr. Saad Jabbar here in Doha. Saad, the Algerians signed a contract worth $8 billion with the Russians. At the same time, Moroccans expressed interest in buying planes worth $2.4 billion from the Americans. How is this issue perceived from an Algerian perspective?
Well, you have a psychological tradition of enmity between the two regimes, as you have rightly said at the beginning of your program, that the Algerians don't trust Morocco since the attempt to force the drawing up of the borders in 1963, i.e. after Algeria's independence. And vice versa, the Moroccans also feel the same. I'm talking here about the two regimes. The Algerians and the Moroccans maybe are the closest people to each other in the Arab world. If you find anyone in the street, you can hardly find anyone who dislikes Moroccans, even at the lowest level or the people on the street. But if the Cold War has ended in between the United States or superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States, that Cold War continues to exist between Algeria and Morocco, unfortunately, for all sorts of reasons, including historical reasons, the border dispute between Algeria and Morocco, plus the Polisario, the Western Sahara issue, and other psychological issues between the two countries, and the manipulation by the two regimes of this fear amongst the population in order to show that, look, we have an Algerian threat if you are by the Moroccan regime, and the Algerian regime would use that claimed or alleged fear from Moroccans.
I got your point, Mr. Saad. You're suggesting this is legacy of the Cold War era. Let me go to Mr. Lahsen Haddad in Morocco. Is this the same feeling echoed throughout Morocco?
I think so. This is the same kind of feeling of distrust towards the Algerian regime here in Morocco, especially with this kind of multi-billion-dollar contract regarding arms. A lot of Moroccans in the establishment here don't see the need for this kind of arms and see it as one way, as a continuation of a pattern on the part of the Algerian regime to weaken the Moroccans. There was an attempt in the 60s, or there was various attempts in the 60s to destabilize the Moroccan regime. There was for the Moroccans, the alleged fabrication of a conflict in the Sahara, the help of the Polisario and the guerrilla warfare in the south of Morocco. All of that is seen as some sort of enmity and also like an attempt on the part of the Algerians to weaken Morocco. Now, with all of this arms race, Moroccans see that as a continuation, that there is some sort of attempt from the part of the Algerians to have a very strong leadership and military kind of power in North Africa, you know.
Let me include Mr. David in our discussion. David, despite the rhetoric from both countries, especially officially, there's no doubt that they have been engaged in an attempt to have a sense of supremacy over the region. Is this the fact that explains the spike in spending on weapons?
I think it probably is, yes. I think, as your two previous speakers have said, I think it's no surprise that the Algerians and Moroccans have been regional rivals, as has been said, dating back to the 60s. I think the Algerians significantly upped the ante in 2006, 2007 with the multi-billion dollar arms deal from the Russians. And it was a surprise in many ways because, you know, as your Moroccan speaker has already said, there doesn't appear to be a pressing need from outside of Algeria for this level of rearmament. From the Algerian perspective, maybe they view this as kind of a replenishment of their aging military stocks and military capabilities after the protracted civil war conflict, where most of the military expenditure has been on counterinsurgency equipment and military equipment to tackle, you know, the terrorist threat. Now what the Algerian regime seems to be doing now is turned its attention to a general replenishment of all of what it views as its declining military capabilities. And it's not a surprise that Morocco has viewed this with a great deal of suspicion.
Okay, Saad, you've been saying previously that both countries, Morocco and Algeria, have close ethnic, historical, social, traditional links. I mean, you just go to the border area between Morocco and Algeria and you see exactly how close both countries are. But aren't you concerned that the military build-up could further poison relations between the two countries?
Well, any tension between these two countries, which are brotherly countries, by the way, the same religion, the same sect, the same doctrine, the same language, and not similarity, there is an identity of ethnicity, language, and so on, geographical position. People on the streets honestly don't understand why the whole build-up is like observers. I mean, we don't understand the reason, the rationale behind this arms race between the two countries. The two countries need really the money for which they are using for the weapons. And to be fair to both sides have been arming themselves. Not yesterday, it has been going on since Algeria's independence. The Algerians felt at the time that Morocco was far superior in terms of, you know, demographically Morocco had a bigger population. In terms of the military, in terms of the power, Morocco was more powerful. And I remember very well as a student how Boumediene, the late President Boumediene, said he always referred to Morocco in terms, when he was asked about demography, he said, can't we have family planning? He said, no, look at Morocco, it has higher population. And in terms of justifying the arms build-up, which Algeria relied immensely on the Soviet Union, and he spent billions of pounds and dollars. And the same thing for Morocco, which are now two brotherly poor countries, yet they are still arming themselves to the teeth, although I don't believe that a war is possible between the two countries. And unfortunately, the outside powers, although they talk a lot about them,
taking advantage of that.
They are taking an advantage, they talk about it, and they say we wish that the Algerians and Moroccans would sort out the Western Sahara case.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Saad Jabbar. Since you have mentioned Western Sahara, let me go to Lahsan Haddad. Moroccans have been saying for the last 3 decades, Algeria is providing the Polisario guerrilla front with weapons and shelter at the same time. Is Western Sahara a factor, according to Moroccans, that has led to this military build-up between both countries?
Well, it is. I mean, like on two sides. On one, because the Polisario has been threatening for the last 4 or 5 years to go back to the arms struggle if there was no solution to the Sahara problem. The second one, I think it's because Algeria has been arming the movement, has been harboring the movement, has also been helping it diplomatically and also on international fora. But there is a difference on how to approach the problem. I mean, like Algeria wants that the United Nations take care of that. The Moroccans and the Algerians could do business on an economic, social, and other kind of levels. The Moroccans say, no, you cannot like harbor a whole guerrilla war, guerrilla movement on your territory and give them all the logistical, military, social, and also diplomatic help. And at the same time, don't think of that as a factor in the relations between the two countries.
Okay, listen, before I go to David, let me listen to what does Saad think about what you have just said. Saad, very briefly, please.
No, the tensions have always been tense between the two regimes, even before the Polisario was created or the Western Sahara crisis.
So this is absolutely before the Western Sahara issue.
I think one of the reasons, one of the aspects or the results of this tension is the Algerian support for the Polisario in order for the Algerian regime or government to consolidate its position vis-à-vis Morocco.
Okay, let me go to David in London. David, these are two key players in North Africa. Are you concerned that this tension could destabilize North Africa?
I'm not concerned at the moment that this tension could destabilise the region. I think there are other more destabilising factors at play. For example, the issues of international terrorism. I think what is perhaps destabilising is the fact that and this is an offshoot of the distrust between the two countries, is that there is very little cooperation between Algeria and Morocco to tackle these issues, and there are major concerns over illegal immigration, transnational security, massive social and economic problems that these arguably the two countries should be working together on, and there isn't any meaningful cooperation in this field at all. So this sort of this level of distrust could lead to other more destabilising aspects flying out of this military build-up.
Gentlemen, we'll definitely talk about different aspects of this issue, but for the moment, time for a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about how interests of some superpowers contribute to stability or lack thereof in North Africa. Stay with us.